It's your call. Good evening and welcome as you join us here this evening in St. John's Church for this evening with my very good friend, poet, broadcaster, writer, walker, expert with dogs. I better mention, works in the diocese as well, Paula McKeown. I suppose I should mention that too. Other dioceses as well, Jim Deeds, as we come to launch his book, Soul Seasons. We're going to hear from Jim throughout the evening here. Obviously, he's going to join in a moment or two with Cara for a song. And we'll also have a number of people reading some of Jim's book, from Jim's poetry book here this evening, Soul Seasons. Jim, you're very welcome. Delighted to be able to host this here for you in St. John's Church. Could I also mention, by the way, Nuala, are you there? Happy anniversary to Jim and Nuala for the day that's in it. Jim, are you going to sing us a song with Cara McCann, who's joining us here in the background?
Cara's going to sing, I'm going to stand beside her. Certainly am.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His words my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine, will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
I think we're getting feedback, are we, through the mic? Can you hear that?
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of feedback. I think it might be from Cara's microphone. So, yeah. Catherine, maybe just if we could maybe just mute Cara's microphone, if you could, and that should hopefully solve the problem.
Yep.
Okay. Tim gave me a copy of his book on Sunday. What I haven't told him is that I've really kept it beside the chair where I pray in the morning time. So, at the risk of doing damage to sales, and I wouldn't want to do that, I've been using this, I think, more as a prayer book than a poetry book over these last couple of days. And talking about sales, maybe Father Brendan McManus, who's with us here this evening, Jim, might get you one of those T-shirts that says, "Have I told you about my book?" I want to share this poem prayer. Today I give you my joys and my sorrows. Today I give you my excitement and my worry. Catherine, that's for us now, it's not in the poem. Today I give you my ease and my discomfort. Today I give you my health and my ill health. Today I give you my friends and my enemies. Today I give you my selflessness and my selfishness. Today I give you my inner smoothness and my outer cragginess. Help me to live fully in each moment. Help me to glorify and love you in each moment. Jim, I'm going to introduce in a moment or two one of the first people who's going to read a poem for us. That's Sister Nuala. So, Sister Nuala, you've been queued up here, so I'll come to you in a wee second. How did the book come about?
I forgot I had to talk there. I was just listening away to Martin and imagining myself with that T-shirt walking about the Glen Road. It was a lockdown book. It was a furlough book, thanks to the diocese who furloughed us. So I was on furlough the whole way through the diocese, and it literally is a lockdown book. Now, a lot of the poems were written before lockdown, but a good number of them were written through lockdown, and putting the book together and coming up with the idea of the book and shaping the book. The book's shaped into 4 seasons. That's why it's called Soul Seasons. So spring we're going to have in a moment, then summer, then autumn, then winter. That was something that came to me as lockdown went on, and I think it probably had to do with something with the unseasonably warm summer. Do you remember that summer in 2020 when I shaved my head? Anybody else do something mad for lockdown? I don't know what happened there, Paul, but I shaved my head and I had a wonderfully long moustache. It was beautiful. But I think there was something in the weather, and because I wasn't working, I was walking every day up on the mountain. In fact, we did a trail like that one day.
We did.
I was walking up the top of the Mona Road and just Route 1 straight up onto the mountain. And I think I was very much in touch with the season of summer, and that's where that idea of the seasons came from. So yeah, it was a lockdown book. I had lots of time, thank God, and that's what I did with it.
Am I being unfair sort of saying for me it's almost become more of a prayer book than a poetry book?
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember you asking me what's the difference between poetry and prayer. I don't know. How long have we got? We could talk all night about that. But there's not. I think the intention is the thing. So whether it's a poem or a prayer is really the intention that you bring to it, isn't it? I think anything can be prayer if you bring the intention of prayer to that. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said that saying your prayers is what you do when you can no longer pray. So there's a difference between just saying our prayers, but praying is more of maybe of an active type of thing. But yes, I suppose anybody that writes a book, you put something of yourself in there, so it's just all of me, the good and the bad and the ugly, is in there somewhere, and a big part of my life is prayer. So there are definitely elements of it, and I think the poem that you read is very much a prayer. Paula, later on, will read one that is very much a prayer. And there's other things that maybe don't seem so much like a prayer, but I suppose they all come from somewhere deep in, and they're all some part of me trying to work out what life is about and what or who God is and how does it work in our lives. So, if it works as a prayer book on your bedside table, then I'm deeply honoured with that. If it works as something you want to get in touch with nature, then fill your boots, as they say. That's good too.
Thanks, Jim. So you talk there about putting ourselves into something. You've put yourself into this book. You put yourself out there. So part of that is the letting go, and that's why I chose this prayer of letting go. Because I think one of the things that happens whenever we let go, God instances, not coincidences, but God instances, as Sister Nuala mentioned on Monday night. I'm going to invite Sister Nuala, daughter of Charity, who had a God incidence. And rather than me tell the story of your God incidence, I know you're going to introduce the poem in a moment or two. Would you share the God incidence that you had with us? And I'll invite you now then to share the poem as well you've chosen.
I think I must be having another senior moment. I couldn't think what the God incident was, but I know I got a little reminder there. On Sunday when I was in Clonard, I got their bulletin, the leaflet, and Jim has been writing in it for the last number of weeks now. And I was reading it Sunday night, and it was something that was really very beautiful. It was very, very strange, very, very, very beautiful about where we are and taking the present moment. And he gave the example of busking in town. I'm not going into all of that now. So I thought, I must use that when I'm doing the night prayer. So came down here on Sunday night or Monday night to do the night prayer and lifted the bulletin from down here in the church. And I was reading it as I was walking up the aisle here. And what did I see? But Jim Deeds launching his book on Thursday night. And I thought it was the Reverend Ruth Patterson a few years ago who said, there's no such thing as a coincidence, but a God incident. And I thought that was really beautiful. There I was with my leaflet with me, saying the few words, reflection before the Compline, and then discovering that Jim was launching his book. So for all of us, and that's meant a lot to me since, when I think, well, that was a coincidence that happened. And when I think deeper into it, it wasn't a coincidence. It was a God incident. So I was really pleased. And then I got a phone call on Tuesday morning, or whenever it was, from Jim. And I thought he had heard the Compline the night before, and I thought he had heard what I had said. And I thought he was ringing me to say, I heard that the night before. And it wasn't. It was to say about the poem, and would I read a poem tonight? So another God incident. So thank you, Jim. And the poem that I picked when I was going through, it didn't take me very long to pick out my poem. And it's A Home for Hope on page 39. That's the poem that I chose very quickly. And, like all of you would say tonight, you could pick every poem that was there, said something to me, but this one in particular. And the two words as a title, the word home and the word hope. And thank God for most of us here tonight, the word home means a happy place, secure place, a safe place. And then the word hope came into it as well, in the home that we're in, that there's hope as well. And then when I was thinking of the few words that I would say, going back to 2019, I rarely heard of the word Wuhan, or the city, or anything much about it. And since then, I think we all have Wuhans in our lives. And we've, as Jim mentions in this poem, we've all had locked doors, and we've all been afraid. And we've gone through those days, never thinking this time last year that we'd be in the same position this time this year, and that we're still afraid. And then after each verse, Jim adds the words, "Dare we hope?" And then he asks us to let the light in. And if we don't let the light in, who else is going to let the light in? And I think that maybe through the pandemic, we have all let the light in for people. And that came across to me when I was reflecting on that poem, you know, a home for hope. Maybe we've all given hope and a home for hope to a lot of people that maybe we didn't know. Maybe they were strangers. And I think it might be one of the good things that has come out of this very sad pandemic that we're still going through. So a home, and we think of the people who don't have homes to go to, and we think of the homes where there's violence and things that are happening that shouldn't be happening in homes. But I stick with the bit, we need to have that hope. And again, we're approaching 2022. So tonight I ask myself, what kind of a home of hope or for hope am I going to give people? So I'll tell you, I will be reading this poem very often, and I love it. So I'm going to read it for you. A home for hope. We are in an upper room, doors locked for fear of infection, prisoners of pandemic distance. The future itself seems more distant than ever. Dare we hope? In these times of lockdown and meltdown, we hear hope has no home here, and hope has no hope there, no home there, save for the home we give it. Do we, in the darkness of our worries, dare to open the doors of our hearts and let the light in? Dare we hope? A good man said one time, speaking of a better man, that he is the same today, tomorrow, and always. He is the same before pandemics, during pandemics, and he will be the same after. There is the light, the key to open the doors of our hearts. This is the home for our hope, that there will be an after-pandemic time, and that it will be there, having travelled the road with us. Dare we hope? For if not us, then who? Who will carry the light to all the nations? Who will give hope a home? Who will tell the truth? We are never abandoned, alone. We are never beaten. The story does not end in darkness, but in wonderful light, and what that light will illuminate. In the after-pandemic times, we will see, like never before, the rights and the wrongs. The way will be illuminated, golden, the way enlivened, and we will grieve, yes, those who have gone before us, and in their honor, build a home for hope, a home for all, a world of oneness and unity. Dare we hope? Dare we not? Thank you, Jim.
So I'm going to ask you in a moment or two just to say a few words about themes. So just to stay with the poem Sister Nuala read it for us there. We're in an upper room, doors locked for fear. And I've very struck with this poem. The fear, it's called The Fearless. The fear of things to come, not yet come, and that will never be, maybe, probably. The great liar lies in its lair, laying and lying, loving lackluster lives lost. Trust, the friend fighting for you, fighting and forming, forever affirming, confirming fulfillment. Nose to the wind now, sent out the path, unknown, nothing to fear, all is new now, this is it. Live. Are there themes that are running through your poetry? Are there themes that are running through this book? And if so, how do they come to be there?
Yeah, I forgot I wrote that till you read it back. I wrote that years ago. There's some of the poems are really old, and that's one of them. That's actually written in response to the kind of rate of suicide in the community where I live, and just seeing how just those poor lives lost, and it was a kind of exhortation to live and to go on, and it was my hope. So that particular poem came from that place. So yeah, there are things. I write for the Reds, as Sister Nuala said, and I have a wee column in their magazine that's called With Eyes Wide Open, I think is the title of it. So, and that's kind of how I write. I just write about what I see. So if there are themes about me, I pick them up. And while I travel a lot for work, when I'm home I don't travel a lot. I try to walk around a mile radius of where I live with my eyes open and just watch the world go by and the world change. So I pick up the themes that are about me. So there's definitely a theme there. Hope is a theme in it. I try to be a kind of hopeful person. I'm not always hopeful. In fact, sometimes I'm fighting whatever's going on in that poem in terms of fear and worry and like everybody else. But hope is definitely a theme for me, and there's something I think in when I'm writing, I'm often called to offer people hope. I think it's a good thing to do. I think the bad stuff in life will feed itself, and we have to feed the good stuff. So I'm called to offer hope. So that's where home from hope for hope comes. And when I look down and I see Paul Doherty there, and Paul runs a thing called Foodstock, Foodstock. Look it up and donate. And they literally feed people. And there's an example of something that I see every day when I'm walking. And there's an organisation bringing hope to the community, like reaching out and feeding people and bringing community. So that's definitely a theme there. The theme of nurturing and feeding people comes through in a lot of the poems. But I'm glad Sister Nuala, all of the three women who are going to read tonight could choose whatever they wanted, and I'm so pleased that you chose that. For another reason, because I wrote that for a Focolare event. So now you have to explain that. So the Focolare community are a community here in Belfast. In fact, they're a worldwide community, but we're blessed to have a community here in Belfast. And they have a charisma gift, a gift for unity of all people and for welcome and hospitality. You've never had a meal or a welcome like in a Focolare house.
Absolutely.
Now, so
Yes.
that poem was written for a Focolare event, so they came to me. The reason they came to me is who publishes the book? It's the Focolare printing people, publishing people called New City. So this book is a Focolare book, as was the previous book, which was called Gym for the Soul. And that was also published by New City. So I'm really glad you chose that poem, Sister Nuala, not only because I love the poem, but because it allowed me to honour the Focolare people. And we have just two of the community here tonight with us. Elizabeth, who we're going to hear from, Maria Rossa. But we can't say too much about Maria Rossa, we'll all start crying. It all may become clear now.
Jim, maybe it's time for a little bit more music.
It's always time for a little bit more music.
Do you want to say anything?
I'm in two minds, right? I'm in two minds about a little bit more music because the system does not do Cara justice, because Cara is a genius. I have a suggestion, Cara. I say bin it all and go to that mic and just play acoustic and just beat it out. So if Catherine can hear me, can you turn off Cara's vocal mic, and Cara's going to turn her amp off, and I'll just put the mic in the right position. And I know it's a chapel, church, but whenever Cara finishes, you are allowed to give her a very big round of applause. We've got dispensation from the boss.
Thank you. That's grand. I'll actually come down here. Thank you. Choice of technology. Great, thank you. Some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Some say love, it is a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Some say love, it is a hunger, an endless aching need. I say love, it is a flower, and you, it's only seed. It's the heart afraid of breaking, that never learns to dance. It's the dream afraid of waking, that never takes its chance. It's the one who won't be taken, who cannot seem to give. And a soul afraid of dying, that never learns to live. When the night has been too lonely and the road has been too long, and you think that love is only for the lucky and the strong, just remember, in the winter, far beneath the bitter snow, lies the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose. Happy anniversary.
Cara, that was absolutely gorgeous. Jim, when you're at home, you're not traveling very much here, you're walking, and you're in tune with the seasons. So in this church, just over a month ago, we had a harvest festival, and we were invited to think about the environment, the goodness of God's creation. We talked about Laudato Si. And for those of us who were present that night, heard an amazing sermon address, call it what you will, from our next speaker, and I'm not exaggerating, Paula McKeown. Paula is the director of Living Church, or could I say, Paula's your boss.
Paula's my boss, that's a better way to put it.
Paula's your boss. And Paula is now going to share a poem she's chosen, and she's going to tell us why she chose this particular poem.
Some years ago, Jim and I met a lovely guy called Martin. And Martin's job description when he was employed was to find traces of the Holy Spirit and to help them flourish. And Jim and I both said we'd quite like that for our job descriptions as well. And I think in truth, that is a little part of our job description. So I've picked a poem this evening, and it's called Spirit of God, and it's from the summer season. But to introduce it, and I think picking up on what Martin said earlier, prayer is the language of the soul. And so just as there are many languages in the world, there are many forms of prayer. Our music is a prayer. Wood carving is a prayer. Poetry is a prayer. So Jim, when it comes to prayer, you are beyond bilingual. For the believer, there is more than words on a page. For the believer, every piece of art is co-created. For the believer, every song is harmonized. And for the believer, every poem is co-authored by the Holy Spirit who lives and breathes in us. So in this book, and in the poems you read, you know that there is a ghostwriter that works with Jim. It's not Brandy McManus. In this book, the co-writer is the Holy Ghost. It's the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, who is at work in each one of us. Spirit of God. Spirit of God, I believe in you. Spirit of God, I love you. Spirit of God, I trust you. Spirit of God, fill me. Spirit of God, energize me. Spirit of God, radiate out from me. Spirit of God, let me be a presence of love, joy, and mercy. Spirit of God, bless our cities, towns, and villages. Spirit of God, fill all hearts. Spirit of God, thank you for the day ended. Spirit of God, thank you for the day beginning.
Jim, just could I ask you to go back, something you touched on there, which is the sense of when you're writing some of this, it can be maybe to work things out, something you see, but maybe something you yourself might need to struggle through. Are you able to say anything to us about that? And I'm also conscious of those who are listening online. There's maybe people at home, for example, really struggling with things. Does poetry help work out some of that?
Oh yeah, creativity in general helps work those things out. I was sitting listening to Paul, thinking I must have been on one that day. I was.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Can you? It's unusual that people wouldn't hear me. I'm usually told to be quieter rather than louder. I must have been really on one because I was full of something there, and it was probably the sunrise or the sunset. Brendan McManus, my co-writer on other books, we love taking pictures of sunrises and sunsets. We both do it. On our Instagram, this is where I say follow me on your socials. Is that what you say, Emer, your socials? Okay. So I take sunrises and Brendan has swans. So check out the social media. But there's something about the sunrise and the sunset that energizes me, and it drew me to that poem. And there's something in the sunrise and the sunset, to link into your question, that there's a presence of both light and darkness in those. And a sunrise wouldn't be really as good if there wasn't a bit of darkness about it. Do you see that? Well, that works. It's amazing, isn't it? And the sunrise would be the same. It wouldn't be quite as good if it was just light. It's framed in some way, and it kind of speaks to me in some way about our lives. There's nobody's life who isn't framed in some way by a bit of darkness at times. So there's something about just accepting that that's the nature of things. Like when Brendan and I are out on the road and talking to people, we often begin by saying that the nature of life is that it's messy. It's not just you. It's the nature of life. It gets messy at times. And I think the sunrise and the sunset for me often inspire me to write stuff. And yeah, writing stuff is a good way to work things out. I would certainly recommend it to anybody. Had a brilliant interaction with our window cleaner earlier on today, because my son Brendan said, if you're going to sell any books tonight at all, you need to have change for people. And I had no change. So I said, where the heck am I going to get change? And then the door rapped. And it was the window cleaner. And I went, window cleaner's bound to have pound coins, right? So I went out and I said, have you any pound coins? He said, well, I can give you 20. I didn't have 20 pounds now at this stage. I said, right, I'll have to go to the hole in the wall, we're negotiating. And he said, what do you need these pound coins for? I said, well, because I'm going to a book launch. And what book? Oh, it's a book I wrote. No way, you didn't write a book. So I said, that here, and even better, and I gave him a copy. And I said, now, listen, this is a book about God and stuff. And there's a bit of that, and it's not only about that, but there's a bit of, because you don't want to hoodwink anyone. And he said, are you a Christian? I thought, right. How do you play this one? You big fella, you know. How do you play this? I took a step back. Yeah. So am I. And he's on this most amazing journey. Like the window cleaner, remember the man talks about music? He's been our window cleaner for 15 years. We didn't know his name until tonight, God forgive us. Nor he ours now, to be fair. And he's on this journey of faith. And anyhow, the reason I tell you that, he said that one of the ways that he's working stuff out in his life is by writing poems.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so it was a lovely wee God incident moment there as well. Just that he's found it really helpful to work out his varied journey through light and through dark, through poems. But I think any form of creativity I would be into, and I would really recommend. I read a lovely thing on your Facebook page a while back, somebody recommending that we all find a recreational niche. A recreational niche, like a wee term, but if you think about, find a recreation, that word, but if you break it down, that means to recreate yourself. Recreation is about recreating yourself. So I'm picking on you a lot, Brenton, because you're in front of me, but Brenton goes open water swimming as recreation, but he recreates himself in it. Feeds his soul in it. And if we don't find those spaces, we burn out. So for people who are experiencing the burnout, the mess of life, to find somewhere you recreate yourself, that might be poetry for you. For me, actually, poetry is it for me, but for me, much more, it's wood carving and doing stuff like that is where I kind of recreate myself. Walking the dog, spending time with family and good friends, whatever it is for you, reach out and find it. And the good news is that it's there already. You just have to reach out. And I found often in my life, when you reach out with a bit of faith and trust, your hand never comes back empty. It usually comes back holding somebody else's hand who will lead you to where you need to go.
Thank you very much. That was really beautiful. Very struck there you were talking about framing, and I just so happened to pick up I'm on page 65, the frame is not the picture. I want to read in a moment or two, but for Some of us were in the church today. We had our primary fives over from St. Kevin's. We had the story of Daniel for anybody who's aware of the readings, and it was in story form. One of the teachers, Miss Bradley, read it, and the children were able to watch the different scenes as the story was read. So afterwards, I came down and I simply put the question to the primary fives: what happened to Daniel? Without a moment's hesitation, one of the primary fives, note carefully, none of the primary fives said immediately, Daniel was framed. Was not very perceptive of a P5. The frame is not the picture. When horror surrounds us on each side, it becomes a sort of frame, framing a snapshot moment in our lives, in our times. But the frame is not the picture. No, it is not. The picture is beauty. And when framed by horror, the beauty becomes more evident. Its colors more vibrant, its scent more alluring, its presence more precious, its message, don't dare give up. And when the primary fives were talking today about Daniel, one of the messages they took from Daniel was, don't give up, keep going. I think it's time, Cara, for a little bit more of your wonderful singing and music.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. O Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves that we receive, and in dying that we're born to eternal life.
That's beautiful. Cara, that was really beautiful. Let me bring your love. Jim, you mentioned the Focolare community. This wonderful community here. They're all over the world, including Brussels, that some of us are going to have to visit to see Maria Rosa. We're blessed with their presence here in Belfast, and for anyone who knows the Focolare community, knows they are a community of welcome, hospitality, but more than anything else, they are a community of love, because they bring love, not in some sort of esoteric, secretive way, but in very practical, real terms. And so I'm delighted to invite Elizabeth to come and share our next poem. to tell us why she chose it and to read it for us.
Thank you, Father Martin. So I picked the poem called The Bridge, and it's on page 80. And I picked the bridge. I was immediately sure that I would pick the bridge because it spoke to me on a variety of levels when I read it. And I think bridges are a very evocative symbol, really, of many things. And when I walk around Belfast, I always tend to take pictures of bridges, even bridges I know already. And they are such a strong symbol of, I suppose, connection between ourselves and others and dialogue. And when I read it, I was struck by a few things there, because I felt this poem is an invitation to build a bridge, to build bridges between us and others, and to also be courageous then to walk on them and to trust that they will hold us to build connections that we so much need in our society. So I'm going to read the poem to you, so it's on page 80. The Bridge. The bridge that carries tired feet and embattled spirits needs only one step upon it. One step, and the journey begins. Yet that step into the unknown is the tough one, as feet search out a hold on the bridge, unsure of the unknown. Two things will conspire to secure the journey's inception. One is the courage the wounded invariably conjure up. The second is a gentle voice, solid support, saying, "Go, all will be well." Thank you.
How did that poem come about?
I love that poem, I have to say. It's good hearing things you writ. There's the poet you wrote ages ago. Do you know how that came about? Does anybody know John Mallon?
Yes.
Up in the Kennedy Centre?
Yes.
John took a picture of a bridge in Newcastle one day and put it up on his Facebook page, and it was a beautiful picture. And I thought that picture deserves a poem. So I sent him a message and said, "Do you mind if I write a poem for your bridge and if I put it up on Facebook?" That's literally how it came about.
Goodness.
That's where it started anyhow. And then I thought about the theme of bridges, and Elizabeth kind of picked up on the importance of bridges physically here in our city. But I didn't write it about, I could say it's like a Northern Ireland thing, and it was about the Catholics and the Protestants being on it, and it wasn't anything to do with that whatsoever. So it was a different thing. It was inspired by a whole different thing of wounded people coming to healing. You'll notice the line in it, that there's a line in it that says, is it the courage that the wounded inevitably conjure up. And that's my experience of wounded people, is that they're brave. So listen, that poem had much more to do with a Jesuit called Father James Martin, who wrote a book called Building a Bridge. It had more to do with that than it did with our city. It was really a cry from my heart about the church and the LGBT community. So that's to get on a bridge together, which in that sense I would have stolen that if I had written it down, because James Martin's book is about that. But that was my heart was in it, that how do we meet on a bridge and just be together and see what happens. So that's where, all because of John Mallon's picture.
Wow,
that's
different it took us. Jim, when I hear about bridge building, and thank you, Elizabeth, for choosing that one, when I hear about the word wounded, I'm taken to Four Corners Festival. You'll forgive me for sort of giving it a plug. Start of February.
What festival's that now, Martin? Tell us a bit about it.
No, don't start me. Jim, in terms of Four Corners Festival, where does the theme or where does the idea of reconciliation and being able to build bridges, the likes of where we are in this part of the city, the likes of this new Greenway, where does that fit within your writing?
Yeah, well, I do, and I said that poem was not about the Northern Ireland context, but I do write a lot about the Northern Ireland context. I write poems for the Four Corners Festival, which is a wonderful festival. It's an inter-church arts festival set here in Belfast, so it brings together people from certainly from the main churches, and the idea is that we would go into corners of Belfast that we're not comfortable with. So, I mean, I had a lovely conversation with a priest in Ardra, in County Donegal, who told me he came to Belfast not so long back specifically because he wanted to walk up the Shankle Road. He'd never been on the Shankle Road. So he came down and he got a bus up the Shankle. So that's something I love to do as well. But I think that's also a theme that comes up pretty much in my poetry quite a bit. And I suppose it is because I hang around with people like you and other people who are very inspirational and have that ability to cross boundaries and be with people from different traditions. And as always, as Paul's a musician too, and there's a number of us here who are musicians, and we know that music brings people together. You know, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We played in the band that I would play in, occasionally played in the Carrickfergus Golf Club the other night, and they said, you can come up in a wee moment, we're just going to toast the Queen. That wouldn't be my tradition that I come from, but fair play, they toasted the Queen, and we came up and played AC/DC, and they danced. Couldn't have got any better than that. So yeah, it definitely comes up, and I imagine it does come up in the book from here and there. I think it comes up when I write for the Four Corners very purposely. I'm writing that, but I'm often writing about oneness. You'll hear oneness and unity. There's a wonderful phrase from Julian of Norwich, of all people. It's an obscure saint, Saint Julian. It's maybe not that obscure. St. Julian of Norwich, who had these real mad visions, mystical visions, and she talked about them. They were wanting. What a brilliant word, wanting. O-N-E-I-N-G, wanting, that the world was in some way wanting, and that would be very sore. Coming together would be very sore because it would be like a kind of childbirth experience. And I believe in that. I fervently believe in that. I can see signs of it everywhere. I wrote a poem in my last book, Gym for the Soul, available from Dublin, called Wanting, and it was that I believe in the oneness of all people. So that is a personal standpoint. It's who I try to be in the world, and therefore it does come out in my writing, yeah.
Jim, thank you. Now, music brings us together. Cara, will you do that for us? Maybe part of this wanting process.
I skimmed across black water without once submerging onto the banks of an urban morning that hungers the first light much more than the mountains ever do. And she, like a ghost beside me, goes down with the ease of a dolphin and emerges unlearned, unshamed, unharmed. For she is the perfect creature, natural in every feature, and I'm the geek with the alchemist stone.
for all of you who must discover for all who seek to understand, for having left the path of others, you'll find a very special hand. And it is a holy thing, and it is a precious time, and it is the only way. Forget-me-nots among the snow, it's always been, and so it goes, to ponder his death and his life eternally. One bright blue rose outlives all those 2,000 years, and still it goes, to ponder his death and his life eternally.
Cara, thank you again for that beautiful music bringing us together. I grew up beside an airport, so every now and again the language of planes comes into my talking. So we're beginning to have the runway in sight. We have the landing coming up, and as we head towards the end of our flight with Jim Deeds tonight. Jim, you've talked to us about the book. You've explained a little bit about how it came about. We've heard a number of different poems, but it'd be really remiss of us if we didn't hear from the poet himself. Maybe you'll share a couple of poems with us, if you would.
Turned 50 this year too. It's harder to get out of that chair.
Try 60.
I'm never going to be 60. So I'll leave that up to you. There we go. Well, I say my thank yous now. Before, is that all right? Yeah. Sure. So thank you for turning up. It's always good when people turn up. So thank you very much for coming out, and anybody who is listening now or indeed in the future. Thank you for the people who read. Didn't they read beautifully? Well, we'll give them a round of applause.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was lovely just to leave it up to you to choose, and you chose so beautifully, because the rest of the poems are awful.
No, you can't say that.
That only came into my head there. No, they're not. They're fantastic. But thank you. You chose them so well. For the Focolare movement, just thank you for being the Focolare movement, and particularly as representatives of the people who publish this book, and indeed another book of mine, and other bits and pieces that I've done with the Focolare community, and I'm very proud to be associated in a small way even with the community. Thank you to St. John's for Martin McGill. There's 7 degrees of separation. Martin McGill is, everybody knows Martin McGill. You know, wherever you go, after about 5 minutes, they go, do you know Martin McGill? So Martin McGill, who's got me into more trouble over these last 10 years than I dare to talk about. But thank you, and for Catherine, and for Liam Hinchcliffe, and Rhiannon, who set up as well. So for everybody here in St. John's. And then Cara McCann. What? Round of applause. Ah, very good. Would you do one more before we finish? Yeah, and we'll have a song to finish from Cara as well. It's just amazing. And to stand beside Cara and play earlier on was like a wee dream. It's great. I've heard her play for so long. She's an amazing musician. Jump On. This is a poem called Jump On. I'm going to say 3 or 4 of them. Is that all right? But I'll say them dead quick. Okay. Jump On. This is for you. I'm going to dedicate a poem for all you people. When things get rough and you're on your own and you can see no way through, jump right on. I'll carry you, my friends. We'll get there together, me and you. When your legs don't walk and walking's tough and you think you can't go on, think again, look this way. Let's go. Jump right on. In the cold times too, when the temperatures drop and you can't feel the good of the sun, jump right on. I'll heat you up. Come on, two's warmer than one. During the bleak, dark days when the sadness comes and you're looking a shoulder to cry on, yep, you've guessed it, I'm the one. Shoulder here, jump right on. When your wee heart's broke and doesn't feel right, you don't have to retreat. Jump right on, I'll pull you close. We'll make one strong, loving heart beat. So that's for you and all loads of people in my life who do that for me. Thank God. That poem was inspired by my dogs. Nearly everything that I do, I lied earlier on, nearly everything I do is inspired. My wee dog Charlie sleeps on my big dog Mac. And they have this mad relationship. Like they would fight over food and all, they're like real siblings. But when it comes to it, Mac gives Charlie a bed every night on his back. So that inspired that poem. There's one poem in this book that I'm really glad that I wrote. It's in the style of what Jan Carson, there's a lovely woman from here, a fantastic writer, but she writes in the style of magical realism. A lovely phrase, magical realism. So I guess this is magical realism because it's about a puddle, and it's about a puddle who has feelings. And it's inspired by another picture by the Reverend Cheryl Mabin. Oh, Cheryl. Reverend Cheryl Mabin took a picture one day of her going into work, and she worked at that time, I think she still does, in the Ulster University. And so it was just a picture of her going into work on a bleak old day, but at the bottom of the picture was a wee puddle, and in the puddle was reflected the sunrise. And it just spoke to me, so I wrote a poem called The Puddle That Captured the Sunrise. Each day she lay, puddled together, a dark watery form on a cold tarmac carpet, added to by the great opening of the sky clouds emptying, or by wave splashes of cars rushing to beat the red light and get anywhere but here. Added to but largely ignored, she was only a puddle after all, and no one notices a puddle. Except that is when stood in or stood on. She dreaded that adults swore as their shoes got wet. They blamed the puddle. You have ruined my day, they'd shout at her, moving away rapidly as if proximity to her was itself the genesis of all ills. Children, full of fun right enough, would kick into her, manic laughter, enjoying themselves, but never a word of thanks was spoken to her. Finished the fun, off they went to the next thing. She did not go off to the next thing. She sat there, waiting. For all that came and went, the puddle had a knowing, a deep knowing of who she was really. Not just puddled together by accident, she was wonderful. Not many people knew this, of course. Well, no one actually, but she was. And each morning she was reminded. As the sun rose, bringing heat and glorious light, she would hold it all within her being. No longer a dark, watery form. No, for those moments, she was the puddle that captured the sunrise. She was reflected orange and red and gold. She was simmering with bird song. She was emerging blue from the black. She was the promise of the day to come. She was all. Nothing could take that away from her. Not the ignorance of folks going by, splashing of cars, emptying of clouds, kicking of kids, nor swearing of adults. Nothing. For this was who she was. So if you're minded and if you're an early riser, you could go to her for those light-filled, glorious moments and see her really. And then you will never unsee her. You will tread carefully now and on around this precious creature of beauty held deep within. It's not really about a puddle, just as a lot of people can feel like that, can they? And if we only knew the beauty that we all hold within us. Let me see what else I will read to you to finish. I've loads of sad poems. I'll try not to finish on a real sad one. Yeah. It's a poem called Silence. And I have a friend called Helen Stewart. Paula, you know Helen Stewart? And I sent her the poem, as I often would do. She's a good critic. And I sent her the poem, and it's like in this book, it's a page and a half. And she said, it's really good, but really you should only write the first 2 lines. So I'll give you 2 poems. I'll give you the first 2 lines, and then I'll give you the rest that I wrote. And I let this do. Silence. I gave it all to God and waited in silence. The silence itself was a cavern of emptiness and solitude most wonderful. 0 gravity, 0 effort. I floated within the soft walls of silence. I weighed nothing and nothing weighed on me. I waited and I did not hear a thing. Hearing is temporal, sound waves wave goodbye. I did not hear, but I felt the answer that has always been there. Stop. Come to me. See, your burden is gone now. In this cavern of my silence, I give you rest. Take it. Stop. You cannot prove to me that which I have not ordained to be so, or that which I already know, having ordained it. Stop. Rest in this solitude that is not solitude at all, but true communion with all things. Rest here often and you will see, you will hear, you will feel what you already know, but fear to accept, as if acceptance will melt its reality. It will not melt this knowing. Stop and know. I love you. Thank you. That's me done. That's me done. Have I thanked everybody I should thank? I fear that I haven't. Happy anniversary, Nuala. Dear God, I may not have got back into the house there. 26 years ago, at this time, we were probably dancing in the White Horse Hotel in Derry, would we have been? So 26 years, my goodness, thank God. And imagine this being what you do for your anniversary. This is more than we usually ever do for our anniversary, so this is good. So, Cara's going to sing at some stage. Thank you very much.
You going to sing another? Okay.
This is a lovely wee hymn just to finish off called Evening Prayer. Jim just put me on the spot there to do another wee one. God, be in my head and in my understanding. Be my every thought and be my evening prayer. In the darkness, alone with the moon and her stars, let me know that you are. Here, be in my head, God be my everything. God, be in my heart as I lay deep in slumber. Let shadows depart and sweetest dreams
be mine. Send the angels to breathe heaven's peace into me through the night, Father, be here, be in my heart, God, fill my everything.
Jim, as we finish, can I ask you to just tell us a little bit about the practicalities? We want to get hold of the book. We'd like you to sign it. Tell us about price and where we get it, etc., etc.
Absolutely. So Brendan and Emer are on the table up there. So if you want to purchase the book, it's there. £6.50, I think, is what it is. And it's also available on www.newcity.co.uk. And for those of you who are watching this on Facebook, I'll put a link to so you can click the link whenever we finish here. But you can order it online, and also it's there. And for those of you who live local to the west of Belfast here, you can also call to my house, and you can get it from me directly if you would prefer.
And just will you say something about for any of us who want you to sign it here tonight? Is that a possibility?
No, I will. It is certainly, but a warning: it costs £6.50, and as soon as I sign it, it devalues by £4. Just so that you know. Yes, I'll be at the table beside the guys there. I'm very, very happy to sign anything at all, checks, books, anything at all.
Just can I finish by saying a huge word of thanks to Catherine McCoy, who's been behind the scenes the whole time. Maybe not so much something that we appreciate, but if you've been watching online, it's really because of all the effort, worry, stress, fret, whatever that Catherine's been doing, because that had not been our original plan. We had 2 other volunteers to do this, but they couldn't unfortunately come, so Catherine had to step into the breach again. So huge word of thanks to her. So as we finish, could I then say on behalf of all of us that we now have launched Soul Seasons by Jim Dietz.